Looks like I've got 6:01 here. Ken, I believe we've got everyone with us here. If you want to get things
Okay,
going.
well, then we may as well get started.
Oh,
Call the meeting to order. Have a roll call of the people present, board members.
yep, give me 1 second here. I prompt you, and then you're waiting on me. That's how it. Okay, Ken Anderson,
I'm present.
Larry Hafner,
Larry, you're muted.
I'll come back to Larry. Franklin Hahn,
Yeah, I'm here.
Wayne Runnigan,
Here.
and Ken Visker.
Ken is here.
Larry Hafner.
Here.
All right, everyone is present.
Okay, then I guess the next thing is a public reading of the notice for the first one hearing, which I believe is for Scott Sanis.
Correct. Please take notice that an application was received from Scott Zanis of Wilmington Township for a variance of setback requirements. A hearing on this application will be held at 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 22nd. Due to the pandemic, the hearing will be held in a hybrid format. I'll skip over the details of the hybrid format. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of the application. The comments were to be mailed to the Environmental Service Department or emailed to the Environmental Service Department and received by April 13th. Comments in regard to the petition received by this date were part of the packets that the board received and were made available to you prior to the meeting. This was advertised on April 7th. I apologize, I'm going to start my camera here.
We can see you.
You want to go through this, get the staff report then and
So Scott submitted a zoning application earlier this year and looking to put an addition on a different building, and as part of that we do a parcel review and found that there was a property line that was too close to an existing building. This building most likely predates zoning, and the west line you could view as that parcel line has most likely been there. But in 2004, the Sanises surveyed off a portion of the tillable acreage that's south of their farmstead and drew a new line in there. And at that time, that new line was drawn in to be too close to the building site. And so we're looking to correct that line tonight. And then as long as since we're here, we'll just make the west property line correct as well, or correct that on paper. Otherwise, everything else looks good. The addition they're looking to put on meets all the building requirements. So I believe they looked at, or they have tried to buy land in the past and have not been able to, so that's not an option. And then they also don't run all that tillable acreage that is around them as well. So I think those were just a couple additional items that were maybe not in your staff report. I'll let Scott add anything else then when it's his chance.
so Scott, do you want to say anything to add?
I think he covered everything real good.
Okay. Any of the board members have questions?
When, this is Franklin, when you said you corrected the property line, did you physically move the property line then into the tillable acres, or what did Amelia mean by corrected the property line?
They split it off in 2004, but what the west property line that one, that was a parcel line, even though it's always been under the same ownership. So we could view that as being correct, as a continuation of a non-conforming status, but since we're here for the south property line anyway, we'll just put that one on, and write that one in the variance as well. But I guess I'm not totally sure what you're referring to, Franklin.
Well, I was just wondering if the property, if they have to have a setback, have to have a variance, and then if you can move the property line, and so are you moving the property line so that there's 50 feet, or are you moving the property line so it satisfy a variance, or what do you mean by moving the, I know you said the one property line, but the other property line isn't of any significant importance, the other property line?
We are asking, we're not moving property lines at all, we're asking for a reduction, to that 50-foot property line setback.
Okay, all right. I was just trying to clear myself. That's.
Anyone else have questions?
So there's actually two buildings involved here. Are you adding on or I know one is in existence, but what'd you say about another property line?
It's that building in the southwest corner of the parcel. It's just one building, but two lines, the western and the southern lines.
Okay.
They are looking at doing an addition on a different building, but that is irrelevant. That, I guess that's part of the parcel review, but is irrelevant to the variance. That one will be fine.
Can folks turn to page 2 of their packets? That might clarify this for you all, because two of you having questions. On page 2, we see the subject parcel highlighted in green, and we see the building for which the variance is sought on the west side of that parcel. It's the very long rectangular building right on the west line.
Okay.
And what Amelia was saying was that west line there, that's a line that existed in 1967 when zoning came into effect. Now, the ownership of the various parcels may have differed, but the line itself is drawn on the public land survey quarter section. For that reason, we could make a case that we should consider that line grandfathered in. The southern line, though, that's perpendicular to that building, that line was placed in what year, Amelia?
2004.
Yep, I believe so, yep.
So that line was placed in 2004. In 2004, the requirement for a yard setback in the ag district was 50 feet. So that line is clearly problematic. We certainly need a variance for that. Because Mr. Sanis is here, there's no harm in just clarifying that southern line is proper, the way that it's set back from the building. So we've included both lines in the variance just to clarify and underscore that the parcel, in particular that building, are in compliance with the zoning rules. What the trigger for it was really the placement of that southern line in 2004.
Thank you.
Else? Wayne?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Now I get it.
Anyone else have a question? Should we go to the findings then?
For finding?
Amelia, I will read if you'd like to type.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I will read each finding requirement. I'll provide analysis that county staff has put together for the board. I'll ask you each for a yes or no vote and a reason for your vote. Any reasons you have to support your decision, please share. If you wish to sign on to the staff analysis, you can simply say as such. If you wish to sign on to one of your colleagues' reasoning, you can simply say as much. Number one, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the official controls. The analysis in this case is the Houston County zoning ordinance identifies the purpose of the Agricultural Protection District to be to retain, conserve, and enhance agricultural land for agricultural uses. Correcting this noncompliance will allow the applicants to continue to develop their commercial agricultural operation. Ken Anderson?
Yes, this keeps as much of the land into agriculture as possible.
Larry?
I agree. Excuse me. I agree with staff analysis and Ken's comments.
Franklin?
Yes, I agree.
Wayne?
Yes, I agree.
And Ken Viskert?
I agree.
Number two, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. This is an existing building that cannot be relocated or removed, and the use of this property is consistent with other agricultural operations found around the county. Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
Yes, I agree.
Wayne?
I agree with staff analysis.
Ken Visker?
I agree.
And Ken Anderson?
I agree with staff analysis.
Number three, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. The property owners unknowingly created this noncompliance when they subdivided and sold a portion of their property in 2004. And it is reasonable for them to have assumed that the county would not facilitate a noncompliant subdivision. It is unique in the fact that the noncompliant structure predates zoning along the western property line and may be viewed as a continuation of a nonconforming use. However, the south property line should have been drawn in such a way as to achieve compliance. Staff presumes this line was chosen because it followed the natural boundary provided by the tillable acreage and eventually aligned with an existing fence. The fact that the county facilitated the placement of the southern line can be viewed as a special condition. Franklin?
Yes, I agree with staff analysis.
Wayne?
Yes, I agree with staff analysis.
Ken Visker?
I agree.
Ken Anderson?
I agree.
And Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Number four, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. This is an existing building that has been maintained well, and so removal or relocation are not options at this point. Purchasing additional land would allow them to achieve compliance, but these property lands have existed for 17 years, so it could be viewed that a variance is the more practical option. Ken Visker?
I agree.
Ken Anderson?
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
I agree.
And Wayne?
Yes, I agree.
Number five, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Farmsteads are commonly split from tillable acreage, and this variance will not change any dynamic between this site and the neighboring property. This proposal has no effect on public health, safety, or welfare of adjacent properties. Ken Anderson?
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
I agree.
Wayne?
I agree with staff analysis.
And Ken Visker?
I agree.
And finally, number six, The request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. The request is an area variance, and the location is not in the immediate vicinity of floodplain. And I'll also add that staff is not aware of any state law of which this proposal is a follow. Larry.
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin.
Yes, I agree.
Wayne.
Yes, I agree.
And Ken Visker.
I agree.
And Ken Anderson.
I agree with staff analysis. So I suppose our next step is to be a motion to approve the findings.
I'll make a motion, we apply, approve the findings as presented.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Kenny Vister. Need a roll call again, Aaron?
Ken Anderson.
Yes.
Larry.
Yes.
Franklin.
Aye.
Wayne.
Here,
Ken Visker.
Yes.
Okay, and then our next step would be to motion to grant a variance. There's a recommended motion in the books, in the packet we got. Is someone willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. Shall I read it or does everybody
That would
see
probably
it?
be the best.
Motion to grant a variance of 40 feet to the west property line and 36 feet to the south property line to meet the required 50-foot setback, 50-foot property line setbacks for an existing building.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Kenny Visker. And any discussion? Seeing none, need a roll call again.
Ken Anderson.
Yes.
Larry.
I agree.
Franklin.
Yes.
Wayne.
yes,
Ken Visker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ooh, that takes care of that. Our next hearing is scheduled for 6:30, if I remember right, Aaron.
That's correct.
So we have the other business that we have to take care of is the minutes of last meeting. We may as well do that at this time. Need a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
I didn't catch who was that.
That was Ken Visker.
Ken
So moved.
Visker, okay, thank you. Need a second?
I'll second it. This is Larry.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Again, we got to do roll call.
Ken Anderson.
Yes.
Larry.
Yes.
Franklin.
Aye.
Wayne.
yes.
Ken Visker.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to take care of now in the near, until that next hearing starts?
Not that I'm aware of.
We can't really start that early, can we?
Nope, we cannot start till 6:30, so we could take a little break. What I will do is I've got I guess one caller here. I'll assign a name to them. But if I think it would be appropriate if folks need to step away for 10 minutes or so, we could start back up at 6:30.
Okay, I may do that.
Phone number, caller on a phone, 608-769-4512. Who is that, please? Oh, no, I lost them. Holly and Amelia, if you want to get a sign-in sheet for the folks who are in the CJC, that would be great too.
I think we'll go on here too. If you guys want to comment when the public comment time comes, we'll have to come up and sit in front of the TV because the camera's on the TV. So in order for them to be able to hear you well, you need to get close to that. You want me to just make a as well? Sure. That's cool. Anybody comes up here too.
You gotta be there too.
You can't start the meeting until 6:30. So I think my sound is.
Yeah, he built that after they, well, I think the one, I mean, the house that burned down was still standing, but it was pretty rough. And then if they have the fire department practice on it, they can burn it down. So that's
For those of you that walked in after I mentioned it before, due to the public comment period, if any of you wish to speak, you'll need to come up to the front here and sit right in front of the TV, because that's where the camera and the audio is, so that'll make it easier for, those that won't be able to.
Aaron, are you there yet?
I am, yep.
It's about 6:28 by my computer. Why don't we get started if we can, with, the public hearing notice and start on your staff report?
Sure. And I just had one caller join us. I'll see if I can get
Okay,
a name on them. Phone number just joining us, phone number ending in 9841. Who is that, please?
Could I interrupt for just a minute?
Go ahead, Larry.
I used to be the zoning administrator for La Crescent Township, and I'm thinking that I probably have a lot of bias or a lot of bias. So I'm going to recuse myself from this meeting and let each of the people speak for themselves. All right?
do you have any other things you would like to add that may background, if that would help us? I don't want to put you on a spot. If you feel comfortable being off, that's fine. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it was a subdivision, and it was put together, and it is what it is. I think,
I think most of the
I
information,
applaud Aaron for bringing this up and getting all of these compliant.
Yep.
But like I said, I've been their zoning administrator for years prior to them coming to the county, so I'm just going to back out.
Yeah,
okay,
I think it's good. I think we, we guard against even the appearance of any sort of impropriety. So, I think on the merits, probably be perfectly proper for Larry to participate, but someone might perceive that as improper, and by him stepping out, we guard against even that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay,
Good luck, you guys.
thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
You bet.
Can I say a moment? I'm the commissioner for this district also, and I had some questions I would like you to clarify before you start the meeting. And one of them was why this was a group applying for the variance instead of individuals. If you could clarify that a little bit for the people, they would appreciate that. And also, what was the other thing that, oh, it was the same thing. Each landowner should have pay for their own variance. I did get an answer from our zoning office on that one, but I think people are confused why we're doing this as a whole. And maybe Aaron could clarify it a little better too. But I think if we did that right away, people would understand where we're coming from.
Ken, do you mind if I take a crack at that first?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, and people are still joining actually, so based on the number of people who are joining the meeting here, it's probably good that we are a little behind schedule in terms of starting. So first, why are there multiple lots involved in this request? This request covers 3 platted subdivisions, all adjacent to one another atop that hill. All of the lots, and I think it's fair to say the lots that have been developed and the lots that have yet to be developed are fairly similar in their characteristics, and the challenges that they would face when developing are fairly similar. Several of these lots are actively being offered for sale, and that's really how the issue came to be on the county's radar. Because of the number of lots, we thought it prudent to bundle them together in one request rather than to do 10 or 18 individual requests that would be nearly identical in the relief sought. And we thought that was advantageous for several reasons. First, the board's time, because the request would be nearly identical, it's a better use of the board's time to consider them all at the same time rather than individually. Arguably, that would be perhaps 18 times more efficient. And then the cost. Every time we put a hearing on, there's considerable cost, staff time at the county level to do the legwork that leads up to the hearing, as well as mailing costs and advertising costs related to the noticing of a hearing. For those reasons, we thought it was a prudent approach to handle them as one rather than individually. Why the fee for the application was not waived, or why it was waived, primarily out of a practicality consideration. If we were to have tried to proportion out the typical $500 fee amongst all the applicants, that would create a logistical challenge where we would be waiting for each portion of that fee to come in before we could move forward. So one slow actor could slow the whole group. Secondly, the cost of the county. If I got folks at home, if you could mute yourselves until you're ready to speak, that would be appreciated. The cost of the county is actually significantly less by bundling and waiving the fee than it would be if we handled them each as we conventionally do, where we assess the fee and we do them individually. And that's primarily, again, due to the staff time that would be needed for 18 hearings as compared to the staff time that's needed for one hearing that contains 18 properties. The fee that's assessed, that covers the stipends for the board members. All the staff time that leads up to the hearings, that comes out of the general fund. So it's actually a more cost-effective approach for the taxpayers of Houston County to approach it in this manner. I think that's all I have on that. Ken, if you wanted to add anything.
I guess I understood Teresa's concern and kind of had wondered if it should have been a part of it for the planning commission instead, but then you're dealing with too big a group, too wide a spread, and we're looking at a small area in a variance to a zoning rather than changing the zoning to fit their needs.
That's an excellent point, that if we change the ordinance without creating a special carve out just for this area, whatever changes we made would apply everywhere. And if we made a special carve out for this area, that again is a more time consuming and costly way to approach a solution to this problem.
Thank you for clarifying that. I did have concerns about that, and I think that you answered them. And it is more cost effective with advertising and posting and publishing and et cetera, to do them individual. Thank you.
If I could make one more point before we begin, the lots that are included in this request are all, as I said, part of previously approved platted subdivisions. But
Right.
none of them were initially considered to be outlots or non-buildable lots. All the lots that are included in this request were presented as buildable and conceived as buildable lots at the time of the subdivision approvals. And as far as I'm aware, up until when the owners of those lots would communicate with our office and find that there's an issue.
Yes.
Why don't we start then, Aaron, reading of the public notice and
Yeah. Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for a variance of area requirements. And I'll note that the county initiated this process with most of these applicants. There were a couple folks who were in contact with us early on. Once the decision was made that we would be doing it as a unit, we then contacted all owners of undeveloped lots atop the bluff in question here and offered them an option of participating. So many of these folks were reacting to a request from the county and not proactively seeking to do this, but did in the end choose to participate. I'll start again. An application was received from the following persons for a variance of area requirements: Paul and Pamela Albrecht, Tiffany and Eric Beck, Jens and Catherine Rabbit, Russell and Sherry Brunk, Kern Minahan representing Eden Management LLP, Catherine Hill, Robert and Patricia Karpinski, Jerry and Carrie Kulinski, Neil and Amy Mighal, Jane McNulty, SN and Shamala Rajagopal, Robert and Linda Schwant, representing the Robert and Linda Schwant Trust, Tom Tornstrom, Daniel and Jennifer Wilson, Jonathan and Michelle Zlabeck, all within La Crescent Township. The variances sought include 6 requests. A variance to allow new buildings on lots that are not buildable lots as defined by the ordinance. Variance to reduce the setback required from a public road. Variance to allow a structure within a bluff impact zone. A variance to reduce the setback from the top of a bluff. A variance to reduce minimum sewage treatment and disposal area standards. And a variance to minimum side yard setbacks. A hearing on this application will be held at 6:30 on April 22nd. Due to the health pandemic, the hearing will be held in a hybrid format. I'm going to skip over the details of the hybrid format. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of the application. Comments were to be mailed or emailed to the Environmental Service Office by April 13th. comments in regard to the petition received by this date are part of the public record, or will be part of the public record, and were made available for review by the board prior to this meeting. And this was advertised on April 7th. So there's quite a bit going on in this request, and many of the different variances asked for overlap with other variances in some way. For instance, the setback from the top of a bluff might overlap with placing a structure in a bluff impact zone. The goal here was to provide a comprehensive list of all relief that might be needed for the lots in question. Additionally, all of these subdivisions consist of a mixture of developed and undeveloped lots. And by and large, there's not substantial differences in the lots that have been developed and in the lots that have not been developed. So the end goal of this request is twofold. It's to allow future development on the lots in compliance with the zoning rules, while at the same time ensuring that development is done in a responsible manner that provides for proper protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. And throughout the process, you can think about the development that has occurred atop the bluff and how that has turned out, what the impacts of that have been or have not been. And that might be a good baseline in trying to anticipate what the impact of the development of the remainder of the previously approved buildable lots would be. I think in this case, I'm going to walk through each page of this staff report with you all just to ensure we're covering everything, and also for the benefit of the folks who are calling in or joining us on the computer who may not have seen the staff report.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a comment to make before we get going too far on this. I thought when La Crescent Township did their own zoning, and I'm not picking on Larry or anybody else, I thought that they had to abide by the zoning rules in Houston County. Now, I know I have the right to go look at these, but I didn't know who to contact. It'd take me a week. Now, we did deny a request down by Brownsville about 9-10 months ago because it was too close to the toe of the bluff. And it's going to be awful hard for me to approve this myself, speaking only for myself, without seeing and having somebody explain where these lots are. And what I would like to do is I would like to make a motion that we table this until next meeting, and the board meets there as a board so we can see exactly what we're approving. And that's my reasonings.
Yep. We did, Franklin made a motion to table it till we had an on-site visit. Anyone else want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay,
I would like to see that myself because it seems very confusing to me without having somebody show. I would have a better view if I knew everything about this. I can read about it and I can see maps, but I'd rather look at it in person.
I can offer some comment. I guess board members are always encouraged to go look at the lots ahead of the meetings. Doing so as a formal, organized body, that becomes a public meeting, then open to the public and has to be advertised. So again, we've had a conversation about this, I believe, as a result of Franklin asking similar questions in the past. And that's been the response, that it's infinitely easier for board members to view these on their own than to schedule a formal site visit.
Well, I did go and see two of them. I went and saw the one that down there in Sheldon. I viewed that one, and then I viewed another one. But here, with these 16 or 17 people, I didn't know who to get all of in contact to go see them and have somebody explain, well, this is my lot here. Some of those lots may vary, even though you say they don't. Maybe we'll have to have a spokesperson and table it. Well, we got a motion on the floor, but if we can't meet there as a board and make a decision, then I guess my motion will die well, you got a second, but I'm not trying to put a damper on it. I just without having somebody explain, well, this is lot 1, this is lot 2, this is what it looks like. How am I going to get a hold of each one of these individuals and have them explain what their lot is to me?
Franklin, these are all lots without houses on them. And I have been there and seen them on several occasions. And it seems to me that given the recommendations that the zoning office has put forward, it's pointless to continue to look at these in terms of each one being separate and unique. They're all very, very similar to all of the houses that have been up there already. And we need to move forward on this. I'm prepared to move because I've seen them, and to go up there, you don't need to contact anybody. All you have to do is look at the lots that haven't been developed, and that's what we're talking about here. It's not like you have to ask permission or identify every single lot. It's easy to identify them. If they don't have a house on them, that's the ones we're talking about.
Well, I mean, I understand that you can't physically look at or that you did not physically look at each site. Again, I guess to Ken's point, the buildable areas on these lots are all immediately off the road, so it would not be necessary to access anyone's property to view the areas in question. Your packet does have many detailed maps that show the locations of the lots that are built, the locations of the lots that are not, provide slope information, which I guess I in my mind is sufficient to understand the requests. But there is a motion made. And
I guess I'm looking at it myself as saying that a lot of it is, there's a lot of various recommendations of stipulations that are going with this. The recommendation of conditions for development that cover a lot of what we need to have done on these lots to proceed. And some of those conditions weren't on that one. The one we denied down in the Brownsville area, he had lots of different areas to build in if you had wanted to. And I guess that's probably more of why it was rejected. Here, we don't have lots big enough for alternate sites. That the location of a building would change the impact of the zoning.
Other differences for the benefit of the board between the Brownsville decision and this would be, it's different in time, it's different in location, and the category of bluff is different. So that was a shoreline bluff we were dealing with there, with recommendations from a state agency for denial. In this case, notifications went to the same state agencies and there are no recommendations for denial, and it is not a shoreline bluff.
I guess We have a motion on to table in a second, so we have to do a roll call on that.
Ken Anderson,
No.
Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes.
Ken Visker.
No.
A tie vote is a fail, so we proceed.
Okay, going through, if you turn to pages 2 in your packets, you're looking at the three subdivisions atop the bluff. And this touches on some of the rules that were in fact and are or were in effect at different times. And to touch on the comment earlier, yes, La Crescent Township did exercise its own zoning until 2018. Larry had left us, but all of these subdivisions were approved prior to his being the zoning administrator for the township. The lots were, the subdivisions were approved at different times. The first and second additions to Crescent Hills were approved in 1979 and 1982, respectively, under the 1977 La Crescent Township zoning ordinance. A Horse Thief Ridge plat was approved in 2004 under the 2002 La Crescent Township subdivision ordinance. The 1977 La Crescent Township subdivision ordinance did not contain bluffland protections or provisions for bluffland setbacks and things of that nature. But they were brought into effect at a later time. When a zoning application is submitted for development on a lot, the standards, the current standards in effect, so in this case, the 2018 standards at the county level are applied. So therefore, if a zoning application is submitted for a house built on these lots and these subdivisions, we apply the current zoning ordinance to the request. Again, all the lots included in this request were initially conceived of as buildable sites as opposed to outlots. There are outlots that were included in the plats. Those were not considered buildable at the time, and those are not being included in this request, so that there is not an attempt to take lots that were outlots and reclassify them as buildable lots. There has been a previous variance granted in the area that reduces the road setbacks for a home. We did receive several inquiries at the zoning office in regards to this request. Many of the folks who inquired did not ultimately submit comments, but we did have several folks ask about tree removal and that there's some concern about tree removal on those lots. I'll make the board aware of that. Site characteristics. Throughout all three subdivisions, steep slopes severely limit the area available for development. Estimates are that only 34% of the total area of the subdivisions, including the public road right-of-way, has slopes of 20% or less. Of the area within Crescent Hills, First and Second Edition, and Horse Thief Ridge, estimates for appropriate sites for dwellings with basements range from very limited, which constitutes 89% of the area, to somewhat limited, which constitutes 10% of the area. Suitable areas for wastewater treatment are also limited, with 95% being very limited or extremely limited when rated for mound systems. If you look at page 5, that's showing you the lots that were approved in Crescent Hills First Edition. The lots that are outlined in blue are the lots that are included that are not developed. They may not represent all lots included in this request, but those are the lots that do not currently have development on them. The key on the right side of the map shows you colors, and it denotes the slope of the ground. So a moment ago, I talked about the percentage of the area that is considered buildable. If you look at the color coding here with green being flat to red being over 24%, you can see that all the flatter areas are right up atop the road, and limited severely to a small percentage of the lots. The road itself, it's showing the road setback, and you can kind of see that larger, also reddish buffer that goes along the road. That is not denoting slopes that are over 24%. That is denoting the 65-foot setback requirement from the township road. So the area that you see between that red road buffer in green and then the reddish 24% and over slope indicator as you move either east or west from the road shows you the area available for development on these lots. It's severely limited. The lots themselves are appropriately sized in acreage, but they do not have appropriate percentage of that acreage being suitable for building. All the building, I shouldn't say all, the vast majority of the building that has occurred there has the house placed right at the top of the bluff. And that's in large part what the preliminary proposals for construction that were received from folks would show, is that a house being slightly on or right at the top of the bluff, and that would allow a house to perhaps meet the 65-foot setback from the road. As you move that back from the bluff to comply with our bluff setback standards, then you push the house into the road setback. So because of that zero-sum nature of that, what you have here is any way you slice it, they're asking for the minimum variance needed to place the house, because the amount left between the setback and the bluff setback, the road setback and the bluff setback, does not allow for a structure to go there. If you turn to page 6, you see the same map displaying the lots within the second edition. Here we have 5 lots that have not been developed. Very similar in the topography as seen in the first. The road is placed upon the crest of the bluff, and the lots come out from that either east or west, with a small area of flat atop the hill and a large area of steep bluff below. And page 7, the same information for Horse Thief Ridge. This is a newer subdivision, and as such, there are more lots that have not been developed. But similar to the other 2 subdivisions, the entirety of the buildable area, or the area that would be likely the buildable area, sitting immediately adjacent to the road atop the bluff. Ken had referred to the conditions that are being recommended as part of the zoning staff's recommendation for approval in this case. And without those conditions, or approving these requests would be irresponsible. It would allow development to occur in a way that could be severely harmful to public health, safety, and welfare. And it could also result in folks in the down the road in the future having few or limited bad options for wastewater treatment or things of that nature. So to combat against that and to achieve what I called a balance between a relaxation of the standard rules coupled with heightened requirements on future zoning applications, we are recommending that any consideration of approval of this also be considered with the inclusion of 4 conditions. The first condition being that one of the following must be achieved. A septic design by a licensed septic designer indicating an option for effective use of a type 1 or type 3 individual sewage treatment system, including identification of primary and secondary treatment areas, or a septic design by a licensed septic designer indicating an option for effective use of a type 4 individual septic treatment system, including identification of primary treatment area. If the type 4 system is used, maintainer records shall be submitted to the county annually. The difference there between those system numbers, a type 1 system is just your standard system. It meets the most basic requirements for either a trench system or a mound system or an at-grade system or a seepage bed system. They are what you find on most lots in Houston County and other counties throughout Minnesota. A type 3 system is a system very similar to a type 1 where some part of the design specifications could not be achieved. So it might be that it's a mound system. We bring in material that sits atop the surface to provide enough soil treatment for the effluent. However, there's not a foot of natural ground. So in that case, you would bring in 3 feet of sand like you would if there was a foot of natural ground, and that would serve as your treatment. However, because there's not that 1 foot of natural ground to provide treatment, it's considered a type 3. Other situations where you might have a type 3 system include if the square footage of the distribution bed needs to be adjusted down from what the standard would be. And then that kicks it into that type 3 category. Those are designed by folks with licenses. So you have somebody with the requisite training and expertise putting those together specific to the sites. A type 4 system is what we call advanced systems. Those are less common in the county, and they're usually reserved for sites that have challenges. The way type 4 systems work is they provide a higher level of treatment either through the addition of UV lights or aeration or something to that effect. And by doing that, they get a higher level of treatment and produce a much cleaner effluent being pumped into their treatment field. And because of that, the lifespans of these systems are longer than of your standard type 1 or type 3 systems. The second condition we're recommending is that all applicable setbacks between wells and septic components shall be achieved. So we wouldn't entertain, if somebody was going to take advantage of the relief that's being sought here, if this were granted, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of these variances and also ask for an additional variance from a well to septic component setback. That's to guard against threats to public health. The third condition we're recommending, and this one I think is critical, is that a site plan incorporating erosion and sediment control designed by a professional engineer licensed in the state of Minnesota must accompany any future zoning application. The professional engineer shall be familiar with Houston County and the state of Minnesota policies and requirements, have good professional judgment and an understanding of erosion processes, materials and methods of erosion control, as well as a working knowledge of soil mechanics. The purpose of that is to bring take extra caution in regards to the placement of the homes, so that homes are placed in a way that provides for their future stability. There's steeper slopes at work there. There's challenges with limited areas. Generally, we do not require that engineers prepare or are involved in the site plan for a house in Houston County, but for these particular lots, we feel that it is an added safety both for the county and for the folks involved in the placement of a future home. In addition to the siting of the home, they would also look at the potential for erosion on the sites. Many of the existing homes up there utilize retaining walls and other features of that nature. Having a trained professional design and dictate what features are needed and where they need to go adds an extra safeguard to the county and to the owners of the lots and to the folks who live in the neighborhood. Finally, any future application would include documentation that standards set forth in Houston County's zoning ordinance section 2918, tree and woodland preservation in residential development must be submitted with future zoning applications. So in this case, we are wanting to ensure that the regulations we have in ordinance regarding how trees are removed from a residential development are adhered to. This guards against the clear cutting of the entire bluff, which impacts the downhill folks, both in terms of their the views, what they see when they look atop the bluff, but also the amount of runoff coming down the hill, the potential for erosion on those slopes. We have appropriate language in ordinance to dictate how trees need to be retained. And we are asking that when the application, anyone looking to take advantage of these variances brings forth an application in the future, they also demonstrate to us that they have either already complied with that in preparation of their lot for building, or that their plan for building will comply with that. So that would mean that somebody who clear cuts their lot and then comes in and asks for a zoning permit, they would likely not be able to take advantage of any relief the board would grant, because they would not be able to meet that condition. Finally, I'll touch on, again, the reason why these lots are bundled together for requests as one rather than individual requests. This is because of the similarity among the lots and the uniqueness of the included area. While the lots are not identical, the lots included share common challenges in complying with ordinance standards that are unique to these subdivisions for the reasons that I just went through. A multi-lot variance approach was considered by zoning staff and discussed with the county attorney, neither of whom were aware of anything that would prevent such an approach, provided that the request can fit into the findings established by ordinance and statute. And again, the efficiencies and cost savings and value to taxpayers in Houston County in the multi-lot approach was covered earlier at the beginning of the meeting. I think I'll leave it there and open it up to questions on the staff report from the board.
These trees that you talk about, is there trees on these lots now? Standing trees?
Yeah, if you turn to pages 5 through, turn to page 5, I suppose. Again, that shows the first subdivision up there. The areas in red, by and large, those are wooded areas with trees on them, steep sides of bluffs. The areas atop the hill, some of those have experienced little to no forestry management. Others are mowed and such with mature trees existing. It varies. If you turn to page 69, that gives you the picture of a lot with the aerial imagery. That's probably what you would typically see for aerial imagery. There you're seeing the canopies of mature trees, and the ordinance, paraphrasing here, but the ordinance requires the retention of any mature native trees that is feasible with a development that's proposed. The concern that the folks who reached out to the zoning office touched upon, to me, appeared to be the clear cutting of the top of the bluff to establish a view from the house down the valley.
So these lots then are bigger than, how big are these lots acre-wise, or don't you know?
Give me 1 second. I can give you.
I mean, just a ballpark.
Yeah.
Ken might know that, but he's been up there.
It'd be tough to know that just by seeing it, but I can tell you here in a moment.
If you look at the plat map,
looking at beacon maps, I think they ranged, the smaller ones were about an acre, a little over an acre. But some of them are quite a bit bigger. They go down into a valley.
Well, after a house is built, then they could clear cut, the property owner could clear cut if they wanted to, I would assume, after they had their permit to build a house. I wouldn't think there would be a zoning against cutting trees on your own property, would there be, after the fact? after a house is
There
built?
are regulations for residential subdivisions, which this is, and for bluffs for intensive clearing. But that's
Okay.
no different than the homes that are already built up there. You know, it would be the same as any residential subdivision where, you know, there's rules against it, but somebody could theoretically do that. It would be a, you know, a zoning violation, just like any violation of the
Okay.
zoning ordinance would be.
All right.
Anything else, Aaron, that you need, or?
Let me just get you confirm Ken's area. Yeah, you know, 1 to 2 acres would be a good estimate for most of your typical lot amongst any of these subdivisions. Nothing else that I need. Again, any questions, I'd be happy
I guess
to.
our next part would be if any of the applicants would like to comment. Would ask you to state your name if you want to comment, and then come on.
Can I suggest that we perhaps do the folks in the room first and then move to
Okay,
the folks who are
yes.
calling in?
Very good idea.
Does anybody here want to comment as an applicant, or?
Just applicants or?
There will be another, like a public comment period. They're just looking for applicant comments at this point.
This is more for applicants, and we'll have to do public later. Any applicants?
If you want to go to the front of the room and then state your name.
I am Russ Bruck, and I have 2 lots out in the Horse Thief Ridge subdivision.
Are you guys able to hear him?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'll say it again. My name is Russ Bruck, and I have 2 lots in the Horse Thief Ridge subdivision. I've owned the lots for about 20 years now, and originally the lots were sold as buildable lots. I could see to allow variance as required that would still protect the bluff top setting according to the current regulations. I think the existing outlots should remain as outlots. One of the biggest things would be to replace trees after the house is built and the septic system is installed and the driveways and all of it, so that, again, from below and from above, the lots are so narrow that in order to get a house, a driveway, a septic field, and a yard area, you have no trees left. That's what the problem is. The lots are too narrow. I have a double lot, and that just barely meets the requirements for buildable area, if you get my drift. I have 2 lots side by side, and between the 2 of them, according to the current standards, I just barely have enough area for a buildable area. The biggest concern I would have would be the driveway, because these lots, for the most part, are above the road, and according to the current regulation, in effect, I understand you have to have a 20 feet distance from the edge of the road to where the driveway can start going up. You have to be 6 inches below the edge of the road before you can start going up. And in my particular case, it's going to take about a 3-foot cut through bedrock and destroying a number of trees in order to accomplish that. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else there? Thank you.
It doesn't appear so, Ken.
Okay. Any of those that are on Zoom want to get in?
I have just an emphasis. I'm John Zlavik. I own one of the lots up there as well in section 1. And I just want to emphasize the staff analysis from Aaron on points 3 and 5. Toward the end of that, he mentions that the current owners acquired the property with understanding that these lots will be buildable, and these lots were valued as buildable lots when they were purchased. So I just want to emphasize that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess if no one else is, board members, do you have any questions that you would want to ask anyone, or?
And can I,
I would like to,
give it,
I would
Aaron.
like to ask a question. That gentleman that said he had 2 lots side by side and he could barely get his house in there and abide by the sewer and the driveway and what have you, were the lots designed too narrow? How are these people with 1 lot going to get this accomplished? Or are they just going to build a little real small house? Or I was just going by the comment this gentleman made.
Franklin, this is Aaron, and while Russ comes back up, if he's going to respond to that, I guess I understood him to be saying that his 2 adjacent lots just barely provide the area requirement in ordinance for building. So not that they barely accommodate him to put a house on there, but the area requirement for building is 9/10 of an acre. So the under 24%. So his 2 lots have barely over 9/10 of an acre, about an acre of flat ground atop, was what I understood him to be saying. But I see he's come back up, so I'll let him specifically address you.
Yes, that is true. That was my understanding. Had Aaron come up and we met, we did some measurements and so forth. I do have enough area to build a house. I have not checked yet regarding septic location. I have a couple spots that could be done, but my main concern would just be my driveway approach from the top of the bluff, the crest of the hill, down to the road. And that was my main concern for coming to the meeting. But yes, the lots up there are very narrow, and that restricts your access to get from the road up to the crown of the hill where the houses are going to be located.
Okay, thank you.
And because folks are on Zoom, it might take them a minute or a little bit to unmute if they had a comment.
Right.
Make sure that you give them enough time to.
Yeah, if anyone is interested in coming on, then we'd sure appreciate it.
My name is Mark Crosby. I live up here on the Horse Ridge Thief, and I think the changes will be no problem, and I welcome our new neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Ken, we have a number of people here from the public that would like to comment when you get to that point.
Okay, I think our first step would be, well, maybe that is appropriate time now, because we have had our little question from board members. Why don't we take from the public?
I thought so. Did anybody want to comment?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys can just come forward and state your name.
Same seat?
Yep.
At the hot seat?
Either one of those two.
My name's Tom Fuchsel. I live down in Old Hickory Drive there. But anyway, so we're down below the lots in question, and I guess our concern is we've got the lots up there, and they're small. Russ just mentioned he's got 2 lots side by side, barely big enough to get a house on. So the board's talking about reducing a lot of the restrictions that are currently in the zoning. Well, most of these lots are going to be single lots, so the only way you're going to be able to get your house up there, you're going to have to pretty much clear cut the whole darn lot. It's going to create problems with the sewage. We're going to have runoff down below. There's already been problems. Some of the people that are with me today, they've had runoff issues. One individual fairly severe, and the other lady creating problems all the time for her. I mean, I've got a few things. I'm going to just kind of read through a few of them here without using up a lot of time. But I mean, the zoning laws are set up to protect the rest of the public, and deals we already had talked about tonight: the slopes, erosion control, wastewater treatment. They're all set up to protect the public safety, health, and welfare, as well as the value of all the neighboring property. But you know, a lot of these lots, granted they're called buildable, that's probably a realtor trying to sell them 2 years back. And I don't think now's the time to be loosening up the rules that much on them. We've seen what happened, I don't know, it was probably 12, 15 years ago when he had that heavy rain, and the houses down in Brownsville, they were sliding right off the side of the hill. Now, luckily, we haven't had that problem again, but the weather patterns everywhere with the climate changes are going more and more to the extreme. So we don't know if that's going to happen again. It more than likely will. And us folks down below, we don't want the houses sliding down on us to totally ruin our properties, our houses, and everything. And as far as the setback off the public roads up on top there, I guess that won't affect us so much. It's going to affect the neighbors. Most people don't want the houses way out to the road there. And as far as the bluff impact zone, it's another one of the variances here. You know, probably the main thing along the roadway, the Horse Thief Ridge up there, I mean, that's Minnesota, it's an Apple Blossom Scenic Drive. It's a state tourist destination. We don't want to see that ruined either. But the sewage, as a whole public, we can't take a chance of ruining our groundwater. You know, that's very important. Without good drinking water, what do you have? We've seen what happened currently over in French Island. They've got the problem the sewage or the water tables rather got contaminated. Once they're contaminated, it's next to impossible to clean them up again. They don't know what to do. So we don't want to take a chance of that happening. And some of these lots, I know they're very steep up there. They're maybe called buildable, but I'm sure the steepness, if you don't have a good building site, I'm sure they're bought maybe at a reduced rate to start with. And I think you kind of touched on this before too, but you know, the lots up there, it's like 90% of them are considered very limited as far as the building site. You've got a very small areas in these lots that can even be built on. And there are existing zoning rules right now that we like the county, the people down below anyway, like the county to adhere to, stick to it. And we all know how rules are. It seems like whatever the rules are, people push them to the limit. A lot of times they'll do things, the clear cutting is one of them. They'll go and they push it to the limit and then they ask for forgiveness afterwards and hopefully people just let them go. But us down below, we're concerned about it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone else has a comment for the board?
My name is Bruce Norgard. I live near Tom down below on Old Hickory Drive. I'm the one who really suffered from the initial problems up on Horse Thief Ridge where trees were clear cut, and I have now an issue when it rains, 3, 4, 5 inches, I will get debris down into my yard. My grass will be flattened out. It's like a little creek running through. And I never had that problem before. I've owned the house since 1993. And even with that big rain Tom mentioned where the houses were going down the bluff, no problem. But then once the bluffs get encroached upon and the trees are cut down, that's a problem. And I hope that the committee will take that into account and really, these people, I don't want them not to be able to build, but I think you need to really be careful on the encroachment on the bluff side because it does affect the people underneath. And, I think the gentleman mentioned, well, once the house is built, they can clear cut. Well, no, they're not supposed to, but there's really not much to prevent it. And there's no repercussions for it. And I guess, yeah, it's a violation of the zoning laws, but nobody does anything about it, it seems to me. And I hope that if this does pass, that some teeth can be put into this where people who violate the zoning laws will have to suffer some consequence. And, that's a concern. And also, of course, it can be an eyesore. So I think the rules that are in place maybe are okay, but they probably should be toughened rather than loosened. But of all things, please be alert to the tree cutting. That to me is the most important part of, not preventing runoff and problems for us down below. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Yes. There's a couple more here.
I don't know who to look at here, but my name is Donna Schultz, and I live at 1510 Old Hickory Drive next to Tom Food Club.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you repeat your name one more time? It broke up a little bit. Donna what?
Schultz.
Okay, thank you.
And my husband and I built in 1986, and we have never had trouble with runoff until 2 years ago. And my back lawn and coming down to the front used to be pretty good grass, lush grass. And now I'm having to do landscaping because all I have left in the back is tufts of grass and then all dirt. And I'm really concerned with what's happening and so rapidly. And I guess that would be a bluff setback issue and cutting of trees. And I'm working on it all the time to correct what has happened to my property. And so I'm very concerned with the tree cutting and erosion, what it's doing to my property. So just from one little lady, I would like you to keep my interests in mind when you're making your decision, because it's very difficult for me and damage is being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Yep.
My name is Mary Ellen Fuchsel, and my husband already spoke, so I don't have too much more to add. But why did I get a letter if this was not going to impact me? If there's no impact, it's not a problem. And so that was my concern. is if it wasn't going to affect me, why did I get a letter about it? And so I'd like you maybe to consider that. Okay, thank you.
Russ spoke again. I agree with all of the statements of the people who have previously been up here. There's been problems in the past. I was excited when I was notified by Houston County that this meeting was going to address these issues. And I think we should, since these lots are sold as buildable and you're willing to allow variances, so long as we can prevent the erosion and replace trees and have these things be enforced so that it's a win-win for the people down below and for the people above. You know, people above up on the hill, again, these lots have been sold as buildable lots. You know, if you're not able to provide variances so that they can be built on, what are those people to do with their lots? That was a question.
Yep.
Living up there for the past 30-some years, I think anyone who cares for their yard and plants trees, they're not having problems. The new houses coming in where they've overcut and not replaced trees, things of that nature. If you're requesting or requiring that registered engineers provide the services to ensure that these conditions will be taken care of, then why shouldn't the people who own the buildable lots as sold be allowed to do so? I think if a person building a house up there has a good relationship with the zoning administration and they try to abide by the rules and the variances as they're allowed so that it remains safe and can protect the beautiful area that we live in, they should be allowed to do so. Thank you.
My name is Dan Wilson. I apologize. I usually wait until everybody wants to go home and then I think I have a comment. But I want you to be aware of something that is happening with the existing homeowners so that you don't come up with solutions for these as yet undeveloped lots that only apply to these lots and not the existing homes. I own 3 congruent lots on the west side of the road, and the homes that are next to those lots are built close enough to the property line that when those homes were sold recently, they could not bring in the equipment necessary for to meet the new requirements for septic systems without coming on to my vacant lots, taking out some trees, disturbing the soil, and so on, just to bring in big enough equipment to put in the mound systems that are now required for existing homes. These variances seem to apply only to the lots which have not yet been built upon, and I don't want to see different requirements for one set of lots, because they haven't been built on, and yet people who have homes already being forced to meet some kind of requirements that are more restrictive in order to be able to sell their homes. From what I understand, people are spending on the high side of $30,000 in order to put in new septic systems. Now, if that's a state requirement, then I understand that everybody needs it. But if that's the case, then am I to assume that, are we to assume that what you described as the septic systems designed by licensed persons and so on will meet those state requirements as well?
Dan, yeah, this is Aaron. Any septic system installed in Houston County needs to meet the state of Minnesota requirements.
So how does this apply to the existing septic systems that were installed long before the latest requirements?
The recommendations that I made to the board earlier would only apply to the lots that are participating in this request. However, any septic system that's replaced in Houston County has to be replaced according to state of Minnesota requirements. That's not required because they're not part of a variance hearing.
All right, thank you.
Aaron, can I just ask you to clarify, or since in a variance you normally ask for specific setback for people, there was a question as to how, when we have a list of general setbacks that are being asked for, or reduction in setbacks that are being asked for, how is that going to work when people come in and make an application? How are they going to be applied then?
Good question. So the advertising was done without specific standards. For instance, the setback from the public road, we didn't specify a specific amount of reduction that was sought, and we don't specify the specific amount of reduction generally for variances, and that is so that the Board of Adjustment has the ability to vary what they grant. So for instance, if we advertise your typical variance request and say they're looking for reduction in a property line setback, we'll advertise it as a variance to property line setbacks, and then the board can determine whether or not it should be 10 feet or 12 feet or 9 feet. So in this case, the categories of variances were advertised generally, but in your proposed motion, in your packet, you'll see some specific language that recommends specific distances, and those specific distances were calculated based on the preliminary site plans that many of the lot owners had provided.
Okay, maybe we'll closed from public comment. Any board members have comments,
Sorry to interrupt,
questions?
Ken. Did you make it, I just want to make sure that all the folks calling in understood that, you know, they were also being asked for comment. It wasn't limited to the folks in the room.
No, I hope we had a couple, if anyone else wanted to, it's open to anyone, yes.
My name's Casey Nicewander. I live on Old Hickory next to a few of the other people in the physical room there. Yeah, I just wanted to comment basically everything that they're saying. So my home is at the bottom of the bluff, almost directly underneath one of these lots. And the home's directly above us right now. The water runoff causes extreme runoff that comes down and forming basically this creek bed that runs all the way through down the bluff into our backyard. It has a pileup of more than half a dozen trees in the back property of mine, which is not something I can get rid of on my own. And it causes this huge waterway, and there's no way for myself or my neighbor to redivert that water. So if we put another home up in those lots, I'm worried that's going to increase that water flow. And the neighbor directly next to me, his deck, which is on the side of his home, has been washed away by this runoff without putting additional homes up there, where they had to bring their deck back. Now they need to put retaining walls just because of this creek that's now running down the bluff. So we're worried, as well as the rest of our neighbors in the neighborhood, that this is just going to increase that water flow. And I'm also worried about the trees. So as people are cutting down these trees, we're directly below them, and they can try to catch those trees, but it's also going to be extremely difficult for them. Our neighbor tried to cut down 11 trees. It ended up taking down 28. So if they try to do that to the lot above us, how many more trees is that going to tear down coming down the bluff? Thank you.
If I might speak, I'm Kern Moynihan, and I own a lot in the first Crescent Hills subdivision. I just wanted the committee to be aware that there is precedence of setback relief up in Crescent Hills. And I had owned a lot number, I guess it's lot number 8, and just because of the way that lot was configured, did request from the Crescent Township Zoning Ordinance Committee about 10 years ago, and was granted some setback relief. So I just want the committee to know that this has been done in the past, and there is some precedence in the past of having some setback relief that occurs through the variance process. So, thanks.
Just let it be.
Aaron, can you explain number 3 on your recommended variances?
The reduction from the top of the bluff?
Yep.
Sure. So in ordinance, a bluff in Houston County outside of shoreland is a slope of 24% or greater with an elevation change of 50 feet. So the bluffs on either side of Crescent Hills Drive clearly meet that definition. Once we have established that there is a bluff there, we then, when we're talking about development atop a hill, we then identify a top of bluff. Outside of shoreland, we're initially looking for a distinct break in slope where it goes from more gentle to steeper. And if we can visually observe that, we would call that the top of bluff. For the benefit of the board, again, looking at your maps on page 5 through 7, that location, that top of bluff, is usually very near where you see a color change from yellow, orange to red, or green to red in your maps, and that red denotes those slopes of over 24%. As a standard within the ordinance, structures need to be set back 40 feet from the top of a bluff. In the case of the likely future development atop this bluff, and nearly all of the existing development atop this bluff, the structures are located right up to the top of bluff or perhaps extend slightly into the bluff. So the recommendation for number 3 would eliminate that 40-foot setback from the top of a bluff. And I will note again, though, that would only be allowed to be acted upon. You'd only be able to take advantage of that 40-foot reduction to put a house in that location if a licensed engineer has prepared your site plan and your erosion plan.
Thanks.
Anyone else have a comment for the board? If not, we'll basically close the public part of our hearing, and board members, I guess it's kind of, any thoughts, concerns?
I would have liked to have seen this before I have to vote on it.
Okay.
We as a Board of Adjustment, and I've asked this question before, but the people that are listening in for their benefit, we cannot, as a Board of Adjustment, change the zoning. So, for example, there would have to be a retaining wall up there to keep the water off. Russ said, I think I got it right. He said that you have to clear most of the trees off the top in ordinary to get your sewer in, your driveway in, your house in. So I can see, even if the property owner does not want erosion, they're kind of bound to have to take them trees out. But we as a board cannot make that stipulation. I don't think that would be something that would have to be done by the zoning, wouldn't it, Aaron?
Not necessarily. So if you were, as the Board of Adjustment, if you were trying to make that apply to all parcels in the county or all properties in the county or parcels that are not party to this request, you are correct. The answer would be you may not do that. But for the lots that are asking for relief, and I'll read here from the ordinance, in granting any adjustment of variance under the provisions of this section, the Board of Adjustment shall designate such conditions in connection therewith as will, in its opinion, secure substantially the objectives of the ordinance, regulation, or provisions to which the adjustment or variance is granted. And to paraphrase that, you can put in conditions that are in some way related to the request. So you can impose a condition that has nothing to do with the relief they're asking. But your example, a retaining wall, I think if you wanted as a board to say all lots that are developed must include retaining walls, you would be able to do that.
But you're talking in the county now. You're not specifically talking these lots, are you?
No, the exact opposite of what you said. I'm specifically talking these lots. You could not apply that to any lots except the lots that are included in this variance request.
I think a lot of what your concerns are is addressed in that number 3 that Aaron recommended being added in. Erosion and sediment control design has to be a part of the plan.
Correct. Yeah, and we didn't specifically say.
In retaining walls may be part of that.
It could be. It's whatever the professional engineer thought. And to touch on some of the comments we've heard about the existing lots, presumably many of those lots were developed without the benefit of a licensed engineer preparing things for erosion and or the placement of the house. So I think that the technology likely exists to do this in a way that would work. And it's just, is the board willing to require folks to do that? And are folks willing to carry through that level of, extra costs to do a development that won't have adverse impacts on their neighbors?
So I have a question for you, Aaron. If we tabled this and we went on our own as board members and looked at this, could we act on it next month?
You certainly could, and if the board wanted, we could do a formal site visit. I guess I just, generally, it's easier if you do that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm asking if that would be prudent here to do this. Maybe all the other board members have looked at it except Wayne, and I understand Wayne didn't either, and I haven't.
I have not been up that site either, so.
I would personally like to look at it myself. I understand that these people that live below this lots or these houses that are built, the erosion problems they're having in their lawns, and I understand that, and I understand the ones that in good faith were sold the lots because the township, and I'm not blaming the township, told them they were buildable lots. So we're kind of in, the board here is kind of in catch-22 as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to see the houses that were built, where the new houses would be built, so that we just don't jump out of the frying pan here and jeopardize the people below or the ones that want to build that already bought lots. I'll let the other board members say something.
I agree. I got to plug in my computer before it goes dead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
Okay, I'm prepared to move in. I've seen these lots. The county made a commitment to these, even though it was La Crescent. La Crescent couldn't be less restrictive than the county. And so when La Crescent approved these subdivisions, they were, according to county provisions at the time, the county made a commitment to these landowners that these lots were buildable. So that puts us in a tough position. Now they're not because of the new zoning ordinances that have been enacted. And so these people would suffer a severe financial setback if we suddenly made these lots simply unbuildable. I don't think they would be sold for anything else, maybe deer hunters. And so I'm satisfied with the recommendations that Aaron has put forth here. None of the homes up there were built according to these restrictions, which may have contributed to some of the problems with runoff and sedimentation. But I'm confident that with these recommendations and with these restrictions, that we're going to have safe septic systems, we're going to have safe drinking water, and with an engineer involved and the zoning office involved, we're going to have homes that are built there that do not create problems for our neighbors. So I would support this variance with these recommendations.
I'm not sure that it really is going to be a big deal. A lot of, you go up there and the old undeveloped lots are basically going to be a wooded area, I think, most of it.
It sounds like there's a lot of concern out there, and I still want to see it.
Okay. Well, maybe that is our best bet to do. Right now, I'm a little bit like Kenny Viscar. I went more in favor of allowing it with the restrictions that we put on. But as a 4-member board, I see ourselves as 2 and 2. And it may be more advantageous to go ahead and table it till next month. And we can look at the sites a little more and do a little more research and see where we are.
I'd like to see members do their research ahead of the meeting. Yeah, we've heard this complaint before that, well, I haven't had a chance to see it. We've all had chances to see it. And if we fail to do so, that's on you. And don't put it back on the rest of the board and stall the process. I'm getting tired of that.
Well, Ken Vester, you might be getting tired of it, but you maybe lived down there. When I got my packet in the mail and there was 16 people on there, I assumed that I would have to talk to all 16 of them.
Did you make a phone call and find out? I don't want to go any further with this, but you know, let's move on. Kenneth, do what you need to do.
Well, I'm not sure which way I should go. I mean, that's my dilemma, because I would like to, I'm concerned about both sides of this issue. I think the requirements that we have, the stipulations and controls are going to alleviate most of the concerns that are really out there. The woodland preservation, but you know, we can have Dutch elm or any disease go through and that whole hillside can be a dead hill. And it still has to be logged then. Every year is different. We haven't had the repeat of the 07 heavy rains in that area. 08, we had it down where I live. But the last 2 years have been, well, 2 years ago was one of the wettest years in general in this county overall. Right now, we're just starting to see springs drying up. So there's a lot of this is just going to be into the natural course of what happens with the variation in weather. We have years of extreme wet springs. We had very little snowfall this last winter. We may be going into a drought for all I know. But I guess I'm a little like Kenny Viscar. I'd like to move on and be done with this, but I don't hate to see it turned down too. And Aaron, if we reject this, can individuals then apply as a one-on-one? That may be the better way. I mean, I could see each individual site being an application.
I mean, certainly they could, yes, I guess that's.
I mean, we're looking at a broader area one, and if when they come up with a site plan and everything like that with the retaining and erosion control, it may be a lot easier for us to decide that that's acceptable.
It would be my recommendation that you table and view them as a unit and consider them as a unit before you decide to take them on individually.
Right. I'm just looking at that as
typically do in a year.
Right.
More hearings than we typically do in a year.
So I think we're in that stage of we need to have a motion. Well, we haven't gone through the findings even.
We haven't gone anywhere.
Well, and if you're looking to table it, we would not need to go into the findings tonight. You could table it at any.
We could table it at any time.
And if you're looking to table it, I would encourage you to do that before we go through the findings, just for the sake of time.
Okay, no one seems to want to come up with it for tabling, so we better get on with the findings.
Well, I made a motion to start with, and it was turned down.
And we rejected it.
So now we're right back to where we were again.
We rejected
that motion. So now you want another
then.
motion, Ken? You want another
Well,
motion to
if we're
table
going
it?
to table it, we have to have a motion now.
All right, so I'll make the motion that we table it till next meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay,
Roll call?
yes.
Discussion. If we table it,
Yep.
we're looking at another meeting up on the
Yes.
bluff, and we'll be right back to where we are right now, I suspect. And then we're looking at 18 separate hearings, not only spending the staff time and the board's time, but all of the individuals that are involved in this. It just seems to me a time-consuming effort that isn't deserved.
I was under the impression that after we viewed it, it would still be as one group, not as individual lots.
Right.
But maybe I was
And-
misinformed.
If we table, it would be just moving this to continue it at our next meeting, the same hearing.
That's all we're asking for. A continuation.
Question. I call the question.
Yep. Aaron, roll call.
Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes.
Ken Visker,
No.
Ken Anderson.
I guess at this time I will say yes. I think we are in a position where we'd be better off doing it this way.
Okay, motion passes. We will, now, just for clarity, for staff's benefit, is the board looking for a formally organized site visit with you all at the same time, or are you planning to view it individually prior to our next meeting?
Personally, myself, I would like to have you there, Aaron, so you can explain to us. You understand the zoning laws better than I think most of the board members, at least me, for sure. So you can explain, well, this lot here, this is where we would allow the house to be built, so on and so forth. So we as a board understand, I'm speaking for myself now, exactly how close to the bluff it's going to be, the top of the bluff, if these trees here have to be moved, so on and so forth. Am I out of line on asking this stuff? I'm asking the rest of the board members.
In each of those questions, the answers are going to be different for every lot. And so you're back to the point of dealing with each individual lot, because if you asked Aaron a general question, he couldn't do that for every lot.
Yeah, by bundling them, I guess we're looking for similar relief for each one, but we aren't considering an individual plan on every lot. Rather, we're dealing with that by requiring that they bring in, a professional to ensure that however they develop it, it's done to a higher standard than we ever do elsewhere in the county because it's engineered. So I could not walk through the subdivision with you and tell you precisely where every house would go ultimately. Some lots may never be developed. Some of the folks who own adjacent lots are likely just looking to retain the value of their property, but that does not mean that in the immediate future they're looking to put another house right next to their current house. What they're looking to accomplish is simply retain the value of it as a buildable lot.
So then do you want us to just go on our own and look at it then? We have a motion on the floor and it passed that we're going to view it. So us board members to just go on our own and view it. And is that what the board is comfortable with?
And Franklin, if I could add one more thing, you might, in your packets, you do have the preliminary plans for folks who submitted them. So you could look at those plans and look at those specific lots and, imagine what that might look like. But a good rule of thumb might be there's not a lot of area between the road and the top of the bluff to build, so it doesn't take a lot of imagination to picture where the future house might go. And looking at the existing developed lots where those homes are placed, if you see those and then imagine a similar placement but with the engineering precautions at play, that would likely give you a good picture of what would likely be anticipated here.
All right.
Kenny Visker. I was just kind of wondering, you had said you had viewed some of those plots, and what was your process of doing it?
Well, I just drove through the subdivision and compared the vacant lots with the houses that, or the lots that have houses on them. And I mean, there are, obviously as I looked at this and I looked at the lots, there are a couple of lots that would be very difficult to build on and may not be able to be built on. But for the most part, the balance of them are going to be similar to most of the homes that are up there.
Okay.
And so
I guess why I asked you was I wanted to get an idea for when I go up there to look.
Yeah, that's the way I did it. And I didn't even have the maps with me. I just looked at the existing homes and then the lots that, you know, the vacant lots, and tried to envision how they would look compared to the existing homes.
Okay.
They're very similar. All of them are very similar. They're sitting.
Well, that's kind of what I gather. You're not, there's only so many ways you can build up there. It's pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
And the few plans we had there looked like they were pretty well engineered with a lot of retaining walls and stuff like that already planned.
You almost need that. I mean, if it's on the low, if you're building on the low side, you're going to lose your backyard. And if you're building on, otherwise it's coming down on you. So, I mean, you gotta engineer those homes and place structures in such a way that they don't erode.
Okay. Anything else? Aaron, do we have anything else we have to deal with tonight?
We do not. For the benefit of the folks on the call, I believe we'll be renoticing this as a continuation. So, you know, if you received a letter last time, you should be receiving a subsequent letter for the continuation of this hearing next month. And I guess I'll just stress that if there's information that you are seeking after you receive your packet, but before the hearing, please reach out to the zoning office to request that before we get into the meeting format so that we can get a decision at the next meeting.
Aaron, you don't have to send out, other than the notice, you don't have to send out anything to us board members again, do you?
I wouldn't anticipate doing so. You know, if I do
No, I just wanted to clarify it.
If I do receive more comments from the public, I probably would send that out. It would be a much smaller packet than you received this.
Right.
And if I did
Well, I
receive
didn't want you to
more
go to all that
preliminary
extra
plan-
work because we got everything here. That's
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got it.
So,
Okay.
if there's no other business, I guess then we need a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Motion by Franklin. Second.
Second, Wayne.
Wayne seconded.
Ken?
I don't know. I don't think we need a roll call vote on that, Aaron.
All right.
Well, good night, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Aaron.